it's actually probably just as accurate to say that I'm a resilience geek. I'm infinitely fascinated by what it is that we can take in and stay ourselves and be transformed and still feel deeply ourselves and move forward. And I've been given various invitations over the years to practice this kind of stuff, and but also been part of larger communities that let me hear what are the ways that other people have faced hard things and built up armor to feel safe again, but then re-soften again and again and again, so that we keep getting to have all the things that make life worth it, like each other. And so I really think of stories, and the reason I'm so excited about Broad Beta, I really think of stories as accelerators of the realities that we're deciding to live into, right? And so I'm going to tell you a story. 24 years ago, I was living on a little tiny island in the Pacific Northwest, and I came out here to Montana to visit my sister, and I met this guy, a Czechoslovakian wildlife photographer, and on our third date, a couple months later, I moved my business and myself here to live with him. And so I bought a truck, drove across the states, and got in late at night. He wasn't there. So I went inside, made some tea, built a fire, and he walks in and he gives me a great big hug, and he said, "So let's unload your truck." I was like, "We're not in a hurry." And he said, "No, I just bow hunted an elk. We're gonna have to go get it in the morning." And I grew up climbing, but not hunting. And so a lot of time in the wilderness, but not thinking of where we were in terms of food unless we were on the ocean. And so, yeah, bit of a surprise. But the next morning we went up, we found it, we cut it into big pieces and hauled it out of Highlight. And there were times when the one I was pulling was going faster than me down the hill. It was like running to keep up with this thing. And he grew up in a culture where hunting is a tradition through centuries, right? And they have all these rituals involved. And he would hang out and listen to the men around the fire and smell sardines and beer. And so for him, like, this is very much who he is and who he wanted to be. And he had hundreds of stories to live in, to be nested in this practice, even in a new country. And so I got that, but for me it was not real on some level. It was like not me. And it wasn't until that winter we got snowed in for 4 days straight out in Clyde Park, and I came across a book written by a woman hunter. And it was a collection of essays, and she had been hunting for 30 years with and without men, way before there were women hunting, right? She was the only one, for most of her life out there in the field with people or all by herself. And there was one story in particular that she said, she described a Thanksgiving dinner. And she described the vegetables that came out of the garden and the meat that came from the hunting, from their freezers, and the honey that they traded with neighbors, and the beer that someone made. And for me, her listening to her voice as a hunter, and then all of a sudden having this shift of, she just described someone who knows has this deep intimacy with every bite that goes into her mouth. She knows way more of her food than most of us ever will. And I want that. And all of a sudden I could come to a friendship with hunting, and with my husband hunting, and a curiosity around for myself as well. Like, what does that look like? And what's my relationship with death? And what's my responsibility in terms of the care and the understanding and the intimacy I take with something that dies for me, right? Am I willing to be one who kills if I'm one who eats? And that's a conversation that everyone, makes for themselves, right? But I was invited to make it because I had a woman tell a story. And so we are finding ourselves here tonight, and I want you just to just relax your shoulders and just feel in your body right now what it feels like to be within this listening, right? Notice whether there are things that you said this evening already or feel able to say later on this evening because who's not here. I went to a women's college and someone came, it was in a grad school class afterwards, after I'd left the women's college, and my professor after class said, "Lorca, did you go to a women's college?" And I said, "I did." And he said, "I thought so." And I said, "Why do you think so?" And he said, "Because you talk in class." And which was horrifying to me. And it's not a matter that men are out there shutting us down, right? At least half or more of it, I think, is self-silencing. That we're deciding how people are going to judge us first, before we even say anything. So part of all of this job, too, is by increasing the number of stories, as we are moving vertically across this planet as well as horizontally, like most people, right? That we start building a nest of stories that we step up and listen to. Every good story, I think you'll find, is powerful, not because it's just got amazing, exciting stuff to it, but because as this story comes up of the change that someone's shifted in, our own story rises up and meets it, palm to palm, and all of the emotion that's inside us meets that, right? And then we kind of become that person a little bit, and they become us. So these lines blend. And I have a 14-year-old daughter, and she moves beautifully on rock. And I love that she lives in a place where she can walk down the street and there are women climbers around for her to see. So she can see you guys and be like, yeah, that, right? And that she's more likely to step up and try something, and that they're more likely to have someone on a face, either inside or outside, who says, "Hey, come over here and try this. Here, I'll belay you." Right? Have you ever done this? So we are creating our own, we're a little bit further back on the path, but we're creating our own nests of stories, our own rituals, our own centuries of building a reality where this becomes less and less of a thing, where it's not an issue. And we can do also the same thing by building ourselves in resilience and strengths and our capacity to be vulnerable without destroying ourselves, right? And by looking at what are the circumstances in our world that feed our capacity to be just out doing what we do really well, right? So voting, right? And hiring, and mentoring. And because all of these things are determining who can take a weekend or a week off and head up into the mountains. Yeah. So I woke up this morning like shaking and so jolly all day and driving my kids crazy because I really wanted to be standing here looking at this and seeing what happens for the rest of the week. So the rest of this week, trade phone numbers, step up, stay high, take care of someone, tell someone a story about when something went really hard for you. Don't be afraid to ask for help or a question or figure something out. And act and be in the way that when you walk away at the end of this weekend, you are twice as likely to be this and have more and more people be this. So this is my statement. Thank you.